So, have you ever actually stopped and thought about who really holds the economic power in today's world? I mean, for over a century, we've been handed this very specific narrative about how the economy works. We picture these massive factories, sprawling assembly lines, and powerful manufacturers just churning out physical goods. We naturally tend to think that the person making the physical product is the one driving the entire economy. But in a world where digital networks and intangible assets absolutely dominate, we kind of have to ask ourselves, is that traditional view still accurate? Or has the real power shifted to someone, or maybe something, else entirely?
To figure out where we're at today, we really have to look back at where we started. Think about Henry Ford, right? The ultimate icon of mass manufacturing. Even he knew the customer ultimately held the purse strings, famously noting that the employer is just a middleman and it's the customer who pays the wages. But while his era was totally obsessed with churning out physical cars as fast and cheaply as possible, today's landscape has completely flipped. We don't live in a manufacturing first world anymore. We live in a highly dynamic, intangible economy.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a massive, fundamental shift in how the world actually does business. We're going to explore exactly how services and intangible assets have completely taken over the modern economy. The days of just building a product and selling it in a vacuum, those are over. Today, everything is a service, and understanding the shift is literally the ultimate key to unlocking modern competitive advantage.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the evolution of marketing thought, define what service-dominant logic actually is, look at value creation in this new order, introduce a service-dominant strategy canvas, and then finish up with a real-world case study on the Spotify ecosystem. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the evolution of marketing thought.
To really appreciate this modern service economy, we need to understand how our fundamental view of marketing and value has changed over time. And it definitely wasn't an overnight thing. It took over a century of industrial and tech evolution. Let's do a super quick 150-year sprint through economic history. In the 19th century, the focus was purely on production, just making things as cheaply and efficiently as humanly possible. Then, by the early 20th century, that focus shifted to the product itself, basically assuming customers just wanted the highest quality features, whether they actually needed them or not. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, and it was all about sales, aggressively pushing volume. Then, in the 1950s, we finally saw a true marketing approach emerge, which actually focused on finding the right products for what the customer needed. And that brings us to today. We now exist in the relational era. The goal isn't just churning out tangible goods for a one-off transaction anymore. It's all about building deep, sustainable relationships and complex networks between businesses, customers, and partners.
Which leads us to Section 2. What is service-dominant logic?
That relational era perfectly sets the stage for the core theory of this explainer. We are aggressively moving away from what academics call goods-dominant logic into something so much more powerful. Why? Because the old worldview is frankly failing in our fast-paced environment. Let's contrast the two. Under goods-dominant logic, the focus is all on value in exchange, meaning value is created on a factory floor and officially captured the exact second money changes hands. The customer? They're just a passive receiver. But service-dominant logic completely flips this on its head. The focus here is on value in use. Think about it. A product is virtually worthless if the customer can't actually derive practical, everyday benefit from it in their own life. Value isn't embedded in a physical object. It emerges when the customer interacts with it. That makes the customer an active co-producer of value.
So let's translate the 4 academic axioms of this theory into plain English. First up, service is the fundamental basis of exchange. This essentially means physical goods are really just delivery mechanisms for services. In today's world, every single business is inherently a service business. Second, the customer is always a co-creator of value. It's like a doctor and a patient. The doctor's medical knowledge only creates health if the patient actually takes the medicine and follows the advice, right? Third, all actors integrate resources from various networks. Nobody creates value in total isolation anymore. And fourth, value is uniquely determined by the beneficiary. You don't get to decide how valuable your product is. The person using it does, based entirely on their own unique personal experience. All right, moving into Section 3, value creation in this new order.
Okay, so if value is totally determined by the user and co-created through experiences, how do businesses actually build an advantage? Let's look really closely at the specific types of resources that create value in the modern marketplace. Under the old industrial mindset, wealth was built primarily on what we call operand resources. These are tangible, physical things that require an action to be performed on them to become useful. Think raw materials, iron ore, tracts of land, or heavy manufacturing equipment. Back in the 19th and early 20th century economy, possessing and controlling those physical, operand resources was the absolute key to market dominance.
But today the game is won with operant resources. These are the intangible elements that actually produce effects on the physical world. We are talking about human knowledge, highly specialized skills, proprietary technology, and organizational culture. So the crucial point to take away here is this: just possessing raw materials is no longer enough. Your knowledge, your team skills, and your ability to build dynamic relationships, those are the true, dominant drivers of modern competitive advantage.
What's fascinating is how these intangible skills actually compound on each other in a sort of hierarchy. Down at the basic level, you have an individual employee's skills. Super valuable for sure, but relatively easy for your competitors to copy or poach. Now, when you combine those basic resources, you get composite resources, like a really strong customer-focused orientation across an entire department. But the holy grail? That's at the very top, interconnected operant resources. This is where basic and composite resources interact and constantly reinforce one another. This creates massive, deeply embedded capabilities like continuous rapid product innovation and organizational learning. And let me tell you, this level is incredibly difficult for any competitor to replicate.
Let's look at how to map this out in Section 4, the Service Dominant Strategy Canvas.
So we know the theory, and we know the resources we need to succeed. But how do you actually apply all this abstract stuff to a real-world business? How do you map out a transition from a dusty product-selling mindset to a dynamic, service-dominant one? Well, enter the Service Dominant Strategy Canvas. It's a brilliant tool designed specifically for modern entrepreneurs to take these concepts and turn them into an actionable blueprint. Let's take a quick tour through its three main rings. This canvas basically forces you to rethink your entire business in three distinct steps. Step 1 is value and use. Here, you're defining exactly who the customer is, the precise experience you want to offer them, and how you're going to interact with them on a daily basis. Step 2 expands out to the service ecosystem. This is where you map out your actual network. What is your core service? Who are your core partners? And what enriching, supplementary services do they bring to the table? Finally, Step 3 is collaboration management. How do you actively manage and nurture the relationships with all those partners you just identified? Because remember, you're no longer just selling a box in a store. You have to actively orchestrate experiences, entire ecosystems, and highly complex collaborations.
Finally, let's tie this all together in Section 5, a case study on the Spotify ecosystem.
Let's see how this all plays out in the real world by looking at one of the absolute best examples of service-dominant logic in action today, Spotify. When we map out the Spotify ecosystem, the huge, glaring realization is that Spotify doesn't actually sell physical CDs. They don't even really sell MP3 files. Instead, they act as an ecosystem regulator. They sit right at the center of this massively complex network of value. They orchestrate a platform where various actors, from record labels providing the music tracks, to advertisers pumping in revenue, to device manufacturers providing the hardware, all seamlessly converge to create an amazing music streaming experience. In Spotify's incredible multi-billion-dollar valuation, it isn't based on physical assets or massive factories. It's based entirely on the co-creation activities of its network. Look at how all these actors contribute. Users don't just passively listen to music, they actively create and share playlists, which makes the platform exponentially better for all the other users. Independent developers build cool integrations, making sure the service is accessible in your car or on your smart home speaker. Record labels provide the core content portfolio. It's the absolute perfect mini-story of network effects. Spotify simply provides the operant resources, the algorithms, the user interface, the platform itself, to let all these different actors co-create value together. So, to summarize our main takeaway from today's explainer, whether your business is selling enterprise software, management consulting, or even physical, tangible hardware, you have to understand that the physical product is merely a vessel. It is simply a delivery mechanism for the intangible service, the knowledge, and the ongoing experience it provides to your end user. Value is never just created in a factory and handed over in a box. Value is always co-created in the very moments your customer actually uses your offering. Which brings us to the ultimate question for you and your own business strategy. As we all navigate this incredibly connected, service-driven global economy, are you still trapped in a 20th century goods-dominant mindset obsessing over the physical transaction? Or are you ready to open up your ecosystem,
Leverage those intangible, operant resources we talked about and truly co-create value alongside your customers. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope this sparks some big, transformative ideas for your own strategic journey.